remember maybe 5 minutes before the end.
Yeah. So yeah, I've pressed record, so that's recording now, thank you. But yeah, I think for me it's quite so our comedy and kind of performance and funny performance was a sort of tool to connect with people, and so it felt quite natural to sort of start doing that in my sort of social art practice, because also it was at a point where I was a bit tired of running workshops actually, and also workshops that felt a bit forced. And I just thought, well, I know that workshops work for some artists as a way of kind of connecting to people, but for me, I'd been sort of doing these funny little performances at home a lot and sort of videoing them, and I've done that for years. Kind of as a student, I was always kind of testing that out as well. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to sort of take those characters outside. And it was, initially it was kind of, I developed characters with community members. But just to kind of step back a little bit and thinking sort of then about actually our upbringing and how that informed perhaps the use of humour in our work. So you spoke a little bit, Rebecca, about where you're from. And we were talking a little while ago about boredom, in like suburban boredom, or you were sort of talking about that. Could you like speak a little bit more about that and kind of to how you disrupt that perhaps?
So I grew up in a place called Southwood and Ferrers, which is in the middle of Essex, and Southwood and Ferrers is quite unremarkable in lots of ways. It's just a town that's surrounded by fields in all directions. It was once voted the 33rd worst town to grow up in the UK because it's so boring. There's just nothing there at all. It's just, there's an Asda, which is like the focal point of this town. And then there's just nothing. They're really, like the young people are bored. But I mean, I know that's quite a privileged thing to say. The worst thing I can say about my upbringing was that I grew up in a boring place. But it was very residential. It's something called a new town. Southwood and Ferrers is a new town. So in Essex, you've got all this sort of interesting and adventurous architecture. And then Southwood and Ferrers was this sort of, so you've got all this modernist architecture everywhere, and it's really exciting. And then Southwood and Ferrers was this really sort of quite regressive architectural step in the 1970s and 80s, where they tried to create things that looked a bit nostalgic. So the Asda that I mentioned earlier is kind of disguised as a medieval barn, and it's ridiculous. Like, it was made in the 1980s, so everything's made of like this sort of orange brickwork. But I think from that, I think that through boredom, it was almost like, I think that it kind of made us be a bit more creative, if that makes any sense. And I think we were talking previously about subcultures, Rebecca, weren't we? And in South Woodham, there's this kind of subculture of the skating culture. There's a skate park there as well. And I grew up with I've got two younger brothers, and like it was in the 1990s, and I think lad culture was quite prevalent at the time as well. So I grew up in the sort of strange residential town with two younger brothers. Jackass was on the TV, and that was like, my brothers were constantly trying to sort of replicate the stunts that you see in Jackass. And I think that all of these things kind of like mix together in my work, and I draw upon them quite a lot, whether I'm doing it consciously or subconsciously. But yeah, definitely through boredom. Although I did tell you a story about a remarkable thing that happened in Southwood, and didn't I, on Halloween?
Well, you have to say that again.
So on bonfire night, this is a kind of example of what happens in Southwood and Ferrers. Some young people put some fireworks in a dog poo bin, and it exploded and went everywhere. And it's like I wasn't there, fortunately, but I sort of read about it in the news. And this is like one of the rare times that South Woodham's ever got in the news, was this dog poo story.
What was the headline?
Pardon?
What was the headline?
I don't know. Can't even remember. I think that whoever wrote it was quite outraged, and they couldn't really see the funny side. But I really sort of, having grown up there, I kind of know what that boredom feels like. It kind of triggers people to do really disruptive things. And yeah, that's my Southwood and Ferrers story. I feel like I've not really painted a good picture of it, but that's where I grew up.
What about the sausage story as well? Was that a
Oh, the
Southwood and
sausage
Ferrers?
story, yes, you're right. So there's this boy in the year above me at school, and he was, I don't know if he was arrested or what exactly he would do with a 15-year-old, but he threw a frozen sausage through an open car window, and unfortunately it broke a man's nose. And that's like, again, that's the second example of Southwood and Ferrers featuring in the media, was this frozen sausage story. I mean, what are the chances of breaking someone's nose with a frozen sausage? Oh, that was amazing. I think he actually, I don't know if you guys remember Bad Lads Army, it used to be on the TV. I think he might have been on Bad Lads Army as well, this boy.
We were talking about sort of that time of there being lots of pranks on telly, so like Dom Jolly, Jackass. I guess we were sort of discussing, was there a kind of time for that kind of prank telly? But then I was thinking about Jeremy Beadle's, what's that? What was it called? What's about? Watch Out, Beadle's About. And actually, that was a fair bit earlier on, and that was a kind of prank, you know. Again, like a whole show based on kind of pranks that were really ambitious, actually, and always involved kind of cars, like cars being squashed, cars sort of like going into the river. Okay,
it does feel like in the 90s and the noughties that there was Dom Jolly's Trigger Happy TV, there was Jackass, Dirty Sanchez, You've Been Framed. I mean, You've Been Framed was a bit different, but it's still this kind of similar kind of humour, I think. There was a lot of them, I think, when I was growing up.
Also, you talked about your brothers and sort of surviving. Have you got three brothers?
2 brothers, and they're both younger.
So has that sort of affected your humour?
100%. Like, I've been thinking about lad culture a lot recently, because I grew up in a house which was definitely really influenced by lad culture. And I think when you say lad culture in an art context, it immediately evokes lots of really negative things like sexist jokes and, you know, just really horrible things. But there's something about lad culture and lad humour which I will admit I do like a bit. I like the outrageousness of it. I like the kind of quick wit of it sometimes. There are elements of it that I do quite enjoy, and I think that when I'm with my brothers, especially when I've been feeling a little bit sort of overworked in some way, when I spend time with my brothers, I always just feel like a weight's been lifted, because it's just 24/7 silliness and like that sort of humour, and I really like that. I think I need that in my life, really.
I do think it's kind of like looking back actually on sort of some of the comedy that I was brought up on, it's very male. It's all men mostly, but then I mean, we'll speak a bit later about sort of care in comedy, and then sort of these amazing female comedians as well. But really kind of, I was thinking about when I was younger, like telly was really big in my house. That was our sort of, you know, Friday night as well. It was quite a thing for me to be allowed to stay up late and watch comedy with my dad. So it was like a bonding as well, you know. And I was thinking about my grandparents, because we were thinking about sharing a One Foot in the Grave excerpt. And then I thought, actually, although that was quite a sort of a pinnacle and an important sort of comedy in terms of like, it's very well written. I know it's a bit repetitive, but it seemed quite relevant in terms of this sort of suburban boredom and those kind of comedies that are based around this sort of the domestic, this family house or whatever. But then I was thinking, that was like the stuff that my grandparents watched, really. And there was a time where, as a family, we went and stayed with my grandparents. These are on my mum's side, they're sort of quite conservative or whatever. And my parents insisted that me and my brother watched Rabsy Nesbitt. And my grandparents were like, not in our house. There was a standoff. And we watched it, but it caused this giant sort of argument. It's like Babsy Nesbitt protest. The children will watch this like comedy where it's only swear words, and yeah.
Because you were saying, like, didn't you say that, this might be going a bit off topic, but didn't you say that your mum taught art in a primary school, or your mum's an art teacher as well?
She was a primary school teacher, yeah.
Is she a comedy influence for you, would you say?
She's a very funny woman.
You said that.
She's quite mad. Which is also, I think, because I started writing a script about her, and then I thought this is actually also, there's that sort of element of tragedy as well and pain. So I stopped writing that script because I read it out to someone and they were like, this is actually quite depressing, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, but so I think it's more that like my parents are quite funny and quite relaxed, really, and so that does kind of, there's a lot of jokes. There were a lot of jokes in the house.
Maybe we can get into this a bit later, but I was going to say, do you think that, like, I know that within my family, I think this whole like 24/7 joking is kind of a way of, I always question, is it a way of like releasing pressure, or is it kind of covering over something more painful? And we can probably get into that a bit later, but I just wondered, like, you kind of touched upon it a little bit there. It's something that is a question that I keep quite current in my head, is what function does this comedy have, this kind of this humour and this piece taking all the time, like what does it actually do?
Yeah, you've got to laugh or else you'll cry kind of thing as well. Yeah. But so it's kind of 20 past. I'd like to share our first video, Rebecca.
Let's do it.
This is kind of, we've edited this, it's sort of excerpts from lots of things. I'll put a credit in after we've sort of seen the video, so you'll be clear on where it's come from. But I guess this is sort of about kind of the comedy perhaps that shaped us. So difficult doing this, by the way, everyone, because there's still loads of stuff that isn't in there and perhaps should be in there.
Rebecca and I have spent long evenings just sending videos to each other and laughing and being, oh, we have to put that in, we have to put that in, but we've had to be really selective. Oh, she's gone silent. You're on mute, Rebecca.
I'm gonna share my screen. That's all right with everybody. Sorry, before I share, I just want to share my audio as well. It's really important. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, shall I mute myself?
Yeah, please.
All right, let tonight's performance be the best performance.
We've come a long, long way together, through the hard times and the good. I have to celebrate you, baby. I have to praise you like I should. I have to celebrate you, baby. I have to praise you like I should.
To Master Chef. Tonight we'll be meeting 3 of Britain's most innovative new chefs. And so without any further ado, let's go over now to the Red Kitchen and meet the first of our new chefs, Joan Baptiste. Hello, Joan. Well, this first dish here is not only innovative, it looks absolutely delicious. So, tell us about it, Joan.
This is a first plate in the form of Jesus Christ for children to learn the story of Jesus.
Okay, right now I can instantly see that it's got 2 eggs for eyes, a tomato, and a sausage.
The story unfolds. See, the people follow him, he is happy. See, they betray him, he is sad. See, his eyes are lovely and open.
Yeah, okay, I can see the eyes there. Look at that.
Oh, he's bloody crying now.
But these ears here, they look really realistic. What are they made of?
No sacrifice is too great for Jesus.
Oh my God! And I did not make your stupid dinner cry, okay? Let's move on now to our second chef. It's Quentin Mintz.
Yeah?
Hello, Quentin.
Hello, my dear fellow. How are you?
Hello. And
Good.
what have we got here?
Why don't you take a look for yourself?
My God! It's not, is it?
I rather think it is so.
Okay, well, how innovative. Let's take a slice.
No, don't do that. Oh, very good.
What
We have no other
cheek.
option.
Okay, moving on to our final chef of the evening. In the blue kitchen, it's Lucas Bonchon, who's world famous for his exquisitely designed replica cakes and puddings. And I don't think anybody could fail to see what this one is supposed to be.
That's not large. Cake a show. It's a show cake. Cake like a show. Show cake. Cake a show.
Well, it certainly is very realistic, so let's take a slice. Lucas, this is a shoe.
No, it's a show cake. It's a cake like a show.
Show me your feet. Look, it's a shoe. Lucas, does this mean that I ate a pair of trousers in your restaurant last week?
No, cake trousers. Trousers cake. It's cake like trousers. Trousers but a cake. Look, try this phone. I got a cakey phone here, like. Try that. Cakey phone.
Lucas, you're just a fakey cake maker and I ain't got time for you. Well, I think you'll agree we've seen some very innovative dishes tonight. And all that remains is the difficult task of choosing a winner. Well, I've just cogitated. And the winner tonight is Quentin Mintz. Well done, Quentin. And I can't wait to get stuck into his...
You could be my unintended choice to live my just inquisitions you could be.
Now, this is the final Kaczynski, which completes his collection.
Oh. You've caught your sleeve on it here, dear.
Oh, bugger. So I have. Oh, yes, he said it was wet.
Poor you.
Will it matter? Will it matter?
I can probably get it off with dry cleaning fluid.
Oh, jolly good. No. He says that it's part of his triptych.
Oh.
But personally, I've hung the other two, so I'd rather hang this one at the back.
I wouldn't bother. I mean, if every artist will stick to the painting and leave the hanging to us. Now, we're kicking off at 6, yeah?
Yes. Did you get the shampoos and the mini mince pies?
Yes, I did. Now, this is the champagne. See what you think.
Right.
What do you think?
Oh, that's ghastly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be perfect.
Absolutely.
Good.
Now, do be sure to get Kaczynski completely pissed, won't you? He's much more interesting when he's drunk. And there is a journalist and a photographer from Helio Magazine.
So, what is the form on the orange dots? Les dots orange, as I call them.
Oh, the orange dots, yes. Well, obviously we're going to put them on the paintings when they're sold. But I've decided to put a few around now to make the artist appear more popular. Yeah.
Thanks.
Got a little something for you, Jack. Let's try and cheer Grumpy Jack up. Just for you.
Is it one of those ones that adjust? Or...
Yes, ma'am. It's really good. It's one of those that kind of sit up where you're watching TV. Yes, here, try, I'll try to adjust it a little. Whoa! Whoa, go! Whoa, go! Whoa, go! Whoa, go! What? Stop! Stop! Whoa, stop!
Unplug it!
Oh, my God. What are you trying to do to me?
Oh,
Jesus, honey.
Push the little button.
Oh, my God. Oh, God! Put it down! Put it cramp! Cramp! Put it... Oh!
It's unplugged!
Oh.
Okay, so that was our first selection of comedy. That went all right, didn't it, Rebecca?
We really like Vic and Bob, in case you hadn't guessed. We love them.
Oh, did you, the crisps that I sent you?
Okay, so Rebecca sent me some crisps, and I think I know what this is, but I'm scared to open it. And even though I think I know what it is, that somehow makes it even worse.
I don't know why you're scared of them. They're just crisps.
I got this mysterious Amazon package in the post through yesterday, and I thought my account had been hacked. And then I just realised it was a mysterious present. We're just going to watch in silence while I do this. It's quite stiff, actually. Hang on. So no, my heart is going right now. Look at this, look how long this is. Oh, it's come straight out the box.
Good, actually.
That was worse than I thought it was going to be. I'm pleased I didn't have my face above that. Jesus Christ. You didn't hear me swear, did you?
So just wanted to kind of, I don't know if that was worth $9.99, to be honest. talk about humour in our practice. Oh, I'm going to just put in the chat actually the artists that have just been featured. So humour in your practice, Rebecca, and thinking about sort of the kind of tropes, tricks and methods of approach that you use in the work that you make and where that kind of comes from.
It's tricky. It's quite tricky to kind of like summarize it in a way. I think a lot of it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, this idea of I think for me, like one of the reasons why I'm drawn to comedy, I was trying to reflect on this a little bit before this talk, is kind of emotionally where it's coming from. And I think a lot of it is coming from a place of frustration and maybe even like a sort of fury that I feel at certain things. And that surprised me when I kind of located and recognized that emotion, because I think I'm frustrated about a lot of things in the world. And when I find that I kind of rub up against things, it's almost like a way of sort of breaking through and like a kind of release for me.
Yeah, and you talked about that, your sort of experience at Royal College of Art and feeling kind of angry there.
Yeah.
That's all right to, if you want to talk about it, the sort of fitting in there and then actually making work that reacted to that.
I think I particularly began to understand the power and the kind of role of comedy in my art when I was at the Royal College. I was in the sculpture department, and I just want to say before I start that there are some brilliant tutors there, and I had some of the best tutorials that I can remember when I was at the Royal College. However, I felt really alienated when I was there, and I really struggled to fit in. When I was on my BA and I got student finance, lots of student finance, it was a real leveler because it meant that I could join in with things a lot more, and I was like a student rep and I was very like proactive. But at the Royal College, it's a very corporate institution, and a lot of, I mean, this is kind of like, I don't want to go off on a rant, and I could talk about this like for a long time, but I do think that higher education, especially for art, is becoming like really, really corporate and really inaccessible for people from low income backgrounds. So I felt really alienated at the Royal College, and I guess I can talk about this a bit later because we're going to show one of my, well, a few of my videos that I made when I was there. That I began making videos that kind of had this release of comedy in some way, and it was kind of me dealing with my frustration about what it was like to be in that space. And I showed it in the Work in Progress exhibition, which is sort of halfway through the first year when you're doing the 2-year MA course. And I had one of my favourite moments ever in an exhibition that I've ever done, because people were really like coming to me when I showed the video that I'm going to show later. People were coming up to me and saying like, I'm really pleased that you showed this humorous video in this space, and like saying how much they kind of resonated with them. And I realised that it's kind of bringing together everyone that feels alienated in these spaces. Because I do think art spaces can be really alienating for a lot of people for a variety of reasons. So I realised that with great excitement that comedy can do that. It can bring people together, and it can kind of sort of, we've spoken a little bit, we'll talk a bit about this later, about wobbling institutions a bit, kind of like just giving them a bit of a shake. And I kind of see that as something really exciting that I'm able to do when I kind of do something humorous in a space.
I've got this Bedwyr Williams quote actually. I've got an art crush on Bedwyr at the moment. His Instagram was annoying me, so I unfollowed him because I just thought it was like someone in their late 40s had discovered Instagram, they're an artist, and suddenly they needed to share all the work on there. But then I've sort of gone back and I kind of appreciate that, and I think it's quite an important satirical sort of look at all of those kind of the people involved in the gallery or the institution and that the art kind of context. And he said when people are laughing, they lose a little bit of control.
Yeah,
it's almost like giving someone an anesthetic like hypnotizing someone. It's good to make people laugh in unlikely places. And the more sober and po-faced an art audience, the more I want to make them laugh, like a miserable curators maybe, or yeah. So I thought that that's...
It's very seductive, isn't it? Comedy and humour in that context. I think you can get away with saying really quite critical things when you do it with a humour as well. You can attack things quite clearly, I think, which is something that I find quite exciting, that you can do it in a way that's quite seductive and you can get people sort of on your side.
Yeah, definitely.
Defences.
But also just that kind of, it's a very, I don't know, there's a sort of generosity in it and a kind of humility. And I quite like that, the sort of care aspect of comedy as well. So it can like nudge and point the finger and, you know, satire something and sort of make fun of something. But at the same time, it can be quite, it's, when it's done cleverly as well, there's a lot of care in that. And I think that that's quite moving as well.
What did you say the other day, Rebecca, about being taken seriously?
Yeah, I think I'd said a while ago that I don't care, as an artist, I'm not fussed about being taken seriously. I don't really mind that, but it's really important to me that the work is taken seriously. I think that's, you know, yeah, as a social artist as well. But, you know, you can sort of make something that's funny, but I'd hate for it to be dismissed because it's funny.
Do you think that this idea of care that you just mentioned, in a way that through sort of performing in a ridiculous way, in an environment where we're supposed to, well, there's a kind of convention of us in some way being like above the audience, perhaps? I hate to sort of phrase it like that. I think it's very clumsy, but do you think there's a sort of, the care aspect comes from being comfortable with looking ridiculous?
Yeah, so you're kind of, well, it's, so once upon a time, right, I did a comedy course, a stand-up comedy course, and I hated it. And I realised in doing that the comedy venue is not the space I want to make work or share work. You know, and that was kind of quite an important moment for me, where I was like, became more comfortable with sort of, you know, being funny in a gallery space or being funny on the street, or, you know, yeah, there was this kind of, it was quite painful. It was very male dominated, but basically the instant kind of teaching was to think about the things in ourselves that make the audience feel better. So, you know, basically putting ourselves down as the content of comedy. And I was just like, I don't really agree with that.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, no one's gonna laugh then. So you're a woman, so you've got it even harder, because you'll step out on the stage and the men will go, oh God, she's not gonna be funny and we've got to fake laugh. And the women will go, who does she think she is? Stepping out on stage like she's funny. So I was like, oh, great. So a sort of male teacher that was sort of quite unsupportive, really, of maybe women being funny as well. But, and maybe this sort of brings us to the next video and the sort of the featuring of women, funny women in this as well. It's been quite important. But I did stick the day-to-day in there, and just sort of quite formative comedy, or like comedy that's kind of formed the work that we make now, perhaps.
Okay.
So yeah, shall I
go for it?
Share that. Also, any questions, if you want to put them in the chat to anybody, but like I say, we will have some space at the end if you want to ask questions then as well. Okay.
there! Halt! Who goes there? It is I, Arthur, son of Uther Pendragon from the castle of Camelot, king of the Britons, defeater of the Saxons, sovereign of all England. Pull the other one. I am, and this is my trusty servant Patsy. We have ridden the length and breadth of the land in search of knights who will join me in my court at Camelot. I must speak with your lord and master. What, ridden on a horse? Yes. You're using coconuts. What? You've got 2 empty halves of coconut and you're banging them together. So? We have ridden since the snows of winter covered this land. Through the kingdom of Mercia, through... Where'd you get the coconuts? We found them. Found them? In Mercia, the coconut's tropical. What do you mean? Well, this is a temperate zone. The swallow may fly south with the sun, or the house martin or the plover may seek warmer climes in winter, yet these are not strangers to our land. Are you suggesting coconuts migrate? Not at all. They could be carried. What? A swallow carrying a coconut? It could grip it by the husk. It's not a question of where he grips it. It's a simple question of weight ratios. A 5-ounce bird could not carry a 1-pound coconut. Well, it doesn't matter. Will you go and tell your master that Arthur from the court of Camelot is here? Listen, in order to maintain airspeed velocity, a swallow needs to beat its wings 43 times every second, right? Please! Am I right? I'm not interested. It could be carried by an African swallow. Oh, yeah, an African swallow may be, but not a European swallow, that's my point. Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Will you ask your master if he wants to join my court at Camelot? But then, of course, African swallows are non-migratory. Oh, yeah. So they couldn't bring a coconut back anyway. Wait a minute. Supposing 2 swallows carried it together? No, they don't have it on a line. Well, simple. They just use a strand of creeper. What, held under the dorsal guiding feathers? Well, why not?
I've decided that if kids want to be more and more like adults, then I've got to stop them in an entertaining and amusing way.
Say hello to Armando, the great adult.
Ooh-la, what's that? It's a key for bleeding a radiator. It opens the airlock. It is something you will have to know because it's something each and every one of you is going to have to do at some point in your life or get someone in for you. Ha-la-la! What about this? We all know what this is. Fire. Now, they all say there's no smoke without fire, but neither is there any fire without one of these. A damages claim form. Zuzaza. With a damages claim form, be prepared for insurance companies to be a little bit sticky about what you can and cannot claim. There are people who can advise you on this. Do learn their numbers. Mababa! This is a perfectly ordinary tin of tomatoes. And this is a perfectly ordinary any vegetable. And put the two together and you get vavuva, va, vo. An acceptable pasta sauce. Okay, I'm going to show you now how to pack a suitcase for a 2-day business trip to Europe. Now, you've all seen Doctor Who. Do you remember the TARDIS? It was bigger on the inside than on the outside. That doesn't actually happen. Things are actually smaller on the inside than they are on the outside, all right? So you've got to realise that, or else you won't get on. As you get older, you may want to start reading these, though in time you'll probably find this one a little bit more annoying. This is what you say at Christmas time. Oh, a thing for resealing wine. That'll come in very handy. Thank you. Zuzza. The reason I'm telling you all these things is because there's a lot of responsibility goes with adulthood, all right? It's not just a big laugh, right? It can be hell.
think about these emotions?
I can really get angry. I feel all tense. And if I just get hold of the one who's taken my crisps, I'd feel like doing something bad to him.
Well, I think it's all cratery and full of, well, they say cheese, but I don't think it is. I just think it's big craters.
Yeah?
With little craters next to it, and big shaggy rocks, and
Why don't you think it's cheese?
well, from colour, no.
Unlike her husband, Paul Daniels, who's known for his cunning stunts, my next guest is known for her stunning costumes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Debbie McGee.
Couldn't resist that.
Was that a trick?
I think that's what they call it in America, but I can't stop there.
No, Paul's not here. Everyone's. So, Debbie, you're very pleasing on the eye, if I might say. So I think Chris has realised that. Thank you. But what first, Debbie, attracted you to the millionaire Paul Daniels?
A week of foul-tempered debate in Europe ended this afternoon as finance ministers agreed new quota rates for trade with the United States. In Brussels is our economics correspondent, Peter O'Hanrahan. Peter, what is the new rate?
It's 30%, Chris. Agreement was a long time coming, but in the end, the decision was unanimous.
What was the Germans' reaction? Because they've been holding out for 40%, haven't they?
That's right. When I spoke to Finance Minister Reinhardt earlier today, he said he didn't like the deal, but he had to go along with it.
Really? You spoke to him yourself? You managed to pin him down? He's a pretty tricky man, isn't he?
That's right.
Where did you get hold of him?
He was in the hotel.
And you conducted a conversation with him about the quota rates?
That's right. He said he didn't like it, but he had to go along with it.
What language did you conduct this conversation in, Peter?
German.
You spoke to him about the technicalities of the deal in German?
Yes.
So what's the German for 30%?
30%.
30%.
Yes.
And what about that quote you attributed to him? I don't like it, but I'll have to go along with it.
That's what he said.
How did he say it?
I don't like it, but I'll have to go along with it.
In German, how did he say it?
Ich nichten lichten.
Presumably you mean, rufen Sie ein Taxi bitte, sonst verpasse ich meinen Flug.
Yes.
No, you don't, Peter, because that means get me a taxi, I'm late for my plane. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you speak to the German finance minister about the new deal this afternoon?
No.
And what was his reaction?
I don't know.
Peter, thank you. It's just been an... Yeah, thanks.
The hurt doesn't show, but the pain's too gross. So stranger to you and me.
Now, the candy will pass by on this conveyor belt and continue into the next room where the girls will pack it. Now, your job is to take each piece of candy and wrap it in one of these papers and then put it back on the belt. You understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Let her roll! Let her roll! Well, wait here. Somebody's asleep at the switch.
What are you doing up here? I thought you were downstairs boxing chocolates.
Oh, they kicked me out of there fast.
Why?
I kept pinching them to see what kind they were. This is the 4th department I've been in.
Oh, I didn't do so well either.
All right, girls. Now, this is your last chance. If one piece of candy gets past you and into the packing room unwrapped, you're fired.
Yes, ma'am.
Let her roll!
Oh, this is easier.
Yeah, we can handle this okay.
splendidly. Speed it up a little!
I'm a beautiful lady with long golden hair and huge breasts. When you date me, I'm going to hug your breath away. I can go all night if you want me to. Come aboard the love train.
Well, Mike, that was pretty hair-raising stuff. How'd you feel?
Bit out of breath. That's about all.
Just how dangerous is it exactly?
Well, you've got to have some common sense in doing it. It's not just jumping on a bike and going over a plank. You know, there's a bit of technique to it.
Your bike looks pretty ancient, actually. Wouldn't you do better with a more modern racer?
I don't know. If I can afford one, I probably will get one.
Why did you take this up in the first place?
Well, I just simply can't afford a motorbike. I love stunts, so I can't afford motorbikes. So I thought I'd take it up on push bikes. It's the cheapest form of transport.
Do you see yourself as the evil Knievel of Britain?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as saying that, no. He's got a motorbike. It's just a cycle jumper. I'm on push bikes. I'm going to try something different. So.
That was funny. So I don't know if you want to talk about anything that we've sort of just seen there.
What did we? There's so many things we just watched.
No, that's the thing. I think I'd quite like to talk with you about The Artist as Fool.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been talking a lot with my collaborator Anna about that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about it a lot because also, you know, we're as artists often in these very sort of serious contexts that aren't just gallery spaces, but in our situation, it's like local authorities and, you know, just and kind of, yeah, so very sort of official buildings and spaces and, you know, institutions and stuff. And then like how we're sort of seen as the arty-farty ones, or, you know, how that can be quite, we can use that basically as a kind of, it can be quite powerful, really. Because I remember ages ago hearing that Vice magazine, right, were let into spaces that usually journalists weren't allowed into because they weren't Vice magazine weren't taken seriously. So as kind of investigative journalists, they could get into those spaces because they weren't taken seriously. So I think, you know, I'm quite interested in that, the sort of the artist as fool. What do you think about that?
I think it comes back to this idea of being taken seriously or kind of underestimated, perhaps. I've been thinking about this like through conversations with you over the last year, I've been thinking a lot more about this. I definitely think there's a kind of anxiety around, if you make work that's humorous, that it will be dismissed, that somehow it's less it has less depth perhaps than a work which is supposedly talking about grand themes or, you know, the human condition. I think that actually, like, humor is really, it has a lot of depth to it. And just because something has the appearance of being perhaps playful or ridiculous, it's not necessarily frivolous, it's not necessarily, you know, superficial, it's actually, it has a lot going on beneath it, I think. So that's something that I find, I worry about in my work, that it could kind of be almost like dismissed too quickly as being like, it's a joke, I found it funny, or I've not found it funny, so then I'm not going to spend more time with it. And I think that's where, like, as artists, we are artists working with comedy, but we're not comedians. We have more than one sort of purpose behind what we're doing. And maybe it's more sort of political or emotional, or bringing all those qualities into it as well. Whereas perhaps you could argue the role of a comedian is to get laughs, it's to tell jokes. But yeah, that's definitely something that I've worried about, is, you know, if you kind of, the work has an appearance of that it will be read like that. Have you found that?
I don't know really, because I feel like maybe I don't really care about whether people want to take it seriously or not. Oh no, I do care. I said earlier, I care about the work being taken seriously, but in the case of like Mavis Davis, for instance, one of my characters, she is really powerful, I think, because first of all, she represents that kind of matriarch and that sort of person that brings everybody together, but also she's quite scary, I hope, because she's not afraid to kind of hold councils to account. Like, she would take you down, local Tory MP, you know, but also she's a laugh. And so yeah, she's a kind of device then, in a way. And but it's interesting because I don't think I'd feel so during lockdown she sort of performed lots online, and performing online is weird because there's no sort of response really, so it is like you're sort of on your own, there's no laughter, or and then turning the computer off afterwards, it feels a bit weird because you've given so much to something. But I couldn't bring Mavis to Portland Street, I don't think. I feel like, yeah, she works well off the street. Anyway.
I was going to say that I think with your work, we were talking a bit about the presence or the importance of joy in a gallery setting as well, and how I think that's kind of undervalued, actually, these moments of joy, of silliness, perhaps, of playfulness. And I don't know if it's about holding people's attention. Like you say, maybe it doesn't actually matter, but I think moments of joy are often not really thought about that much.
Yeah, definitely. But also sort of misbehaving.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I found. So at the beginning of lockdown, when I first came across your work, my Instagram feed was just full of the most, like, you know, I've got this show coming up. It was all very sort of polished. And then I remember Mavis popped up on my screen and she was applying paprika to her cheeks in the form of bronzer. And it was just so, like, refreshing, and it was so wonderful. And I felt like this is the reason why I want to be on Instagram, is to see this kind of content. It makes me feel better. It doesn't make me feel in some way kind of more depressed about things. Like, it has this kind of wonderful moment of just, yeah, joyfulness.
Yeah, and Instagram's a great platform to share Mavis, definitely. And also, interestingly, in like the last video, we also put some kind of YouTube videos in there. YouTube's just amazing. It's like such a kind of education for me, and there's just so much good stuff on there. It's like the best kind of library ever.
I don't think we have hierarchy in terms of our influences, do we, Rebecca? Like, I think we just sort of, especially as we've grown up with telly, I think that for the first 18 years of my life, really, telly was my kind of main access to moving image. And I think that we don't really have a hierarchy. We just find this stuff that we love, and why not use YouTube? It's brilliant. It's incredible.
It's also quite liberating as an artist to go to that there was a moment for me where I was like, oh, the references that I share don't have to be academic. Thank God for that. I can share like Vic and Bob and all these other things that actually are way more important to me.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'd like to play now some of your videos. And also there's a vintage excerpt. There's an excerpt of a video that I made 15 years ago, maybe even 16 years ago now, when I was a student.
It's exciting. I've not seen this.
Yeah, I don't know. I just sort of felt a bit like I was putting a dunk on it, actually. So we'll just, I'll share that now, if that's all right with everybody.
First video that you're going to show of mine is kind of like, it's not really finished in a way. It was something that I made when I was at the Royal College. I've never shown it anywhere. You guys are the first people I've ever shown it to. It was just like a studio experiment, but I thought it was important and relevant to the conversation to put it in. Just to kind of throw that in there.
Is the video lagging a bit, did you say, Rebecca?
think you should be right if you just press play now, because you've given it like a moment to catch up. I just don't want to miss any of yours.
Okay. It stimulates my mind. So yes, thank you. Thank you. Hi there, my name's Lorraine, and I came down from Hackney about 6 years ago with my husband, and I've been living in Crystal Palace now. Basically, I've joined this group, and I'll be quite honest with you, I was never really a book reader until I remember quite specifically a few years ago I watched Richard and Judy's Book Club Prize, and they did a review of a book called The Alchemist by Paul Coelho. Coelho, that's right, thank you. And I just found that I got lost in it, and that's what I like about books, because I'm a busy lady. I've got kids and I've got a lot on my plate, and it's nice just to get lost in my books. So that's it, Lorraine, that's my name. Hello, my name's Judith and I'm from Wales and I live in Norwood with my husband Howard. I like books. At the moment I'm reading Jilly Cooper. I don't like Jilly Cooper as a person. I think she's a bitch. But she's got great style, and I like her book Polo because I think she really hits it. My husband, Howard, he's from Iceland, so every so often I sound a bit Icelandic. Hello. But yes, Judith. Bit random, that one.
I love it, brilliant.
Actually, it's quite funny. They're all based on friends of my mum's.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see I did a really bad Welsh accent and sort of covered it up there at the end?
I thought it was good. It's better than I could do.
So yeah, that's kind of that's a little bit of our work. Rebecca, it's so good to like sort of share those videos of yours as well. What the RCA one is amazing as well. I've never seen that one before.
I've been a bit hesitant to show it. I think it shows a lot of how I was feeling at the time. And that is literally in the studios in the former sculpture building. So there was this kind of raised platform bit, and that was kind of my perch. I used to just go and sit up there so I could get away from everyone. Yeah, I threw a dummy of myself, and I don't know whose studio space that was, but I waited until a weekend and then I just went in there and did it. Yeah, I think I was thinking about what you were saying earlier about not worrying about being taken seriously, and I've realised that's not true for me. I think I worry a lot about, on some level, people getting like something else that might be happening alongside the comedy. And I don't think I'm as sensitive about it as I used to be, but I think I do want people to perceive that. I feel very vulnerable actually when I show these things, and I'm sure you probably feel the same. There's a lot of vulnerability in looking ridiculous or kind of like showing these sort of very personal things. Because even like you were saying, I don't think comedy is like a mask, like a facade. I think it actually can show kind of like what's really going on, and perhaps in those videos I'm kind of more myself than I am talking here right now. So
you wear masks, Rebecca.
Yeah, so it's a bit cliched, that, wasn't it? Sorry everyone.
No, it's great. I think something I think also you were talking about not really being able to separate yourself from the work as well, and I guess I was doing that in sort of saying I don't care about not being taken seriously so long as the work's taken seriously. So there is, yeah. Although obviously I am one and I am the work. Anyway, I think also just the sort of style of your videos is often like telling a joke. So it's for me, so it's the kind of setup and punch, which is the kind of approach really in stand-up comedy. Do you agree? Or
I think it's kind of like staging or setting up a situation and letting something unfold. I do always have a hope of what the outcome's going to be, but I really like allowing space for the world to kind of like act back upon me. So I think there's definitely a sense of like structure. There's something that I'm kind of hoping for in a way. So for example, with the shark on the skateboard going down into the swans, I was kind of hoping that I'd go, first of all, straight down the ramp and not off the side of it. So I'd go straight down the ramp, but I wouldn't hit a swan. That was another thing. I mean, they were quite far away from me. I just wanted to startle them, really. So I kind of set it up and I hope that's what will happen. And then I still find it surprising, even though it's a scenario that's been set up to go in a particular direction, I'm still as surprised as the audience when I watch it back, because there's all this kind of stuff that is a bit spontaneous perhaps as well.
It's very clever as well, I think.
Oh, thanks, Rebecca.
Very beautifully kind of composed and curated.
Thank
you. So I just want to sort of open to the floor if anybody has any kind of questions at all, or so Tim's written in the chat, don't you think that there's a huge difference between the comedian on stage, film, TV and the artist who uses humour? You are after a different thing?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. What do you reckon, Rebecca?
Yeah, I guess it's just like the kind of context thing that I was talking about as well. Although I feel like I don't discriminate with where I share the work. So, but I don't. So, Tim, can you unmute? I don't know if you want to sort of talk a little bit more about what you mean there.
Well,
you know what you think around that.
I try and use humour. I mean, I've written stuff, and within the films I make and the writing, I hope there's humour, which may not always seen, especially now about aging. A lot of my stuff is about sort of becoming quite a lot older, but trying to maybe. But also, I've worked with performance artists and so on in the street who are using humour, but sort of using it to make points which are maybe different. When I see a comedian, you know, when you see, say, the Lucy Show, who was brilliant, I mean, she was amazing, but she was after the joke. She was after the laugh, wasn't she? She was after the people to switch on again next week because they'll get the same thing. Whereas if, I know it sounds silly, but a performance artist doing almost the same, you know, you've seen, you know, I've seen performance artists doing almost the same sort of thing as that. They're looking, I think, for something different, although they're using the same humour, perhaps more surreal, a sort of a look at life as a sort of that sort of,
I think it's,
you know, we're, if you like, life here and then life there is the humour. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's interesting because like Gilbert and George's performances, for instance, were very sort of po-faced and quite kind of serious but funny. And also we were going to maybe share like Marcus Coates's work. So Marcus Coates, the artist who kind of performs in these kind of spaces. It was a project that he did in Elephant and Castle, where he kind of set up a meeting with kind of council members, and you're not sure whether to laugh or not. I think that's the thing, is kind of the audience, Tim. So the audience in a gallery doesn't know if they're allowed to laugh or not. And it's a sort of, you know, even for a funny performance, isn't it? Because it's like, yeah. What do you think, Rebecca?
I think it comes back to this idea. Maybe I'm being unfair to like comedians, but I think that they have something very specific that they're looking for. So they're setting up a scenario that people are going to laugh at. And I think that as artists that are working with comedy, I'm interested in the variety of responses that my work can get. I've had people cry looking at my work before. I've had people laugh. I've had people, be really dismissive and rude and think it was rubbish. I've had all sorts of responses to what I'm doing. And I think that that's sort of, I think you're right, Timothy. I think you're right, because it's like, I can't remember what I was going to say now. I think you said that it's like something closer to life. You said something about it almost like reflecting life more. And I think that that's something that I think about with art as well, that it kind of, through using comedy, it almost encourages us to have like a comedic eye and to find these moments of humour in everyday life and scenarios that are not funny, but always keeping that sort of eye, because actually that can help us cope with the multitude of challenges that we get in everyday life. Just finding humour and joy in things that, I think is really important.
So Neil's asked a question. And Neil says, thanks for a really lovely and funny talk. Pleasure. The question is, what's your favourite piece of art that wasn't meant to be funny, but was? That's such a good question.
That's a really good question.
It's difficult though.
Anything that takes itself too seriously. I found some Marina Abramovic performance is quite amusing sometimes. I think anyone that takes themselves really seriously and there's this kind of weightiness to it, and this is just me talking from my perspective, I think there is something quite amusing there. There's something a bit kind of, yeah.
And actually, Tim, those very serious and very earnest pieces of performance art where they stare right through you and use those, and it's I find those kind of hilarious as well. And I love Brian in Spaced. He's a kind of artist who takes himself really seriously. There's a really amazing scene in that where someone walks into his flat and they can't find him, and he's kind of in the painting. It's exactly that. The stuff that takes itself too seriously is really the funniest, definitely.
Yeah.
And question from Glenn at AirSpace Gallery, is the difference that for you guys the laugh is a means to an end, not the end? Yeah. I like that.
You want people to keep thinking about it. I think that's what it is. You want to kind of them to be thinking about it on the way home, perhaps after they've been to visit the gallery or wherever they've witnessed the work. Whereas with comedy, they might leave on this kind of euphoric high of having laughed a lot, but it might not hold them in the same way.
Yeah. And I think also it's not that sort of like, telling a joke, clap, 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 the end. Yeah. I like the kind of making things memorable. And Emily Speed says, definitely relate to the use of humour to mask pain. Always seemed like a very Scouse thing growing up, that you would laugh the most at grim times. Yeah, it's that you've got to laugh or else you'll cry thing, I think. Yeah. Also thinking about Hannah Gadsby flipping that and using the stage show to explore serious things. Not a question, sorry. Thanks for a really great talk too. Such a pleasure to listen. That's lovely.
That's lovely. I've written Hannah Gadsby down because I've not heard of Hannah Gadsby.
Me neither.
No.
So, has anyone else heard of Hannah Gadsby? And in the gang? Yeah. Oh God. Is it like a really famous, funny woman that we should both know about hosting?
Exciting. We've got something to watch after this, Rebecca.
Great. Exactly. We can do that. So thank you. And Lydia says, have loved this, thanks. How has your comedy changed as you've got older? Oh, that's quite interesting, because that's why I quite wanted to sort of show that video that I made 16 years ago, where I feel like actually have not really progressed. That's quite lovely. And also, what kind of old lady comedy artist do you think you'll be? Oh yeah, I love thinking about us as old lady comedy artists. But first of all, Rebecca, do you want to respond to how has your comedy changed as you've got older?
I don't think the comedy's changed. I don't think what I find funny has changed, but I think I've become more bold and confident in not being embarrassed about what makes me laugh. So I think that it's kind of a maturity around just its self-acceptance, not being afraid to be a bit weird sometimes as well, and embrace that and not sort of, you know, shut it away.
Yeah, and I think actually that, sorry, the term I was trying to find earlier, but I couldn't remember it, is to be self-deprecating. And that's the comedy approach, to kind of almost put yourself down and then heighten the audience. And that's like a comedy thing. But actually it's been nice to kind of also like sort of be confident in saying, well, I don't want to put myself down and that be kind of your laugh. I don't want to be laughed at in that way, actually.
That reminds me that maybe, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but your experiences when you were younger, we were talking a bit about our physicalities and you know, for example, I'm quite tall and I was always the tallest girl in school, and all of my best friends were always really small and petite. And in all of, I was telling Rebecca that in all of my PE lessons, especially dance lessons, they always used to say to me, the PE teachers, they'd always be like, Rebecca, we want you to be the tree. We want you to stand in the middle with your arms out and your fingers like this so you can have the branches. And then all of these like really petite girls can kind of dance around you. And I think that it's kind of it's almost like through performing with my body, it's like as I've matured and kind of accepted myself, I am quite tall, and, you know, like accept that about myself, that I've kind of been able to be more funny and like not sort of take my appearance so seriously, not feel a pressure to be pretty and graceful and all of those things that I think we feel pressured to be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not that tall. I'm quite average and average looking, really. So I don't know if, I mean, I had really gappy teeth, massive gappy teeth when I was little. And so that was kind of learning to laugh at myself or whatever. But I'm just conscious it's 7:30 and I think we should wrap up and just, sorry to kind of end with the image of my gappy child self, but thank you all for joining us tonight. It's been a really happy April Fool's Day to share with you. So yeah, thank you. And thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thanks, Rebecca. It's been lovely. It was so nice to meet you guys as well. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So yeah, if you want to go, that's great. Rebecca and I are going to stay on and have a bit of a catch up, but yeah, thanks everybody, and we'll see you soon, hopefully in a physical. AirSpace is opening soon. Woo! Oh, thanks Rebecca, thanks Glenn for hosting.
Well done. That was brilliant, really good.
Oh, thanks.
I'm so glad we recorded it as well. So if that's okay, we'll share that on YouTube eventually. I'll upload that to the AirSpace YouTube, Glenn.
Yeah. Just need to get editing, right?
Great. I think we spoke about everything. I don't think we missed anything important out.
No.
Just quickly, do you want me to leave this open so that you can carry on? I've got to go.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Glenn.
I'll just leave it open. So, Rebecca, see you soon. Have I got an email reply due?
Yes. So you sent me a very long email and I'm working my way through it.
Fine. After Easter's fine.
Thank you for getting back to me so quickly, though. Actually, it really helps.
Okay. Have a lovely weekend and everything, and I'll see you all soon.
Thanks, Glenn.
Bye, Glenn.
Oh, that was lovely.
That was actually really nice. We had a small group, but I think that it